Okay, I'm doing.
Hey, listen. I'm in the meeting. He's like, honey, you're fine. And then don't. Then they're splitting both of them. It's like, wait, what? I was wondering if this time together, that's what more about. I wouldn't kind of be on an even thing. Yeah. We're trying to stay in the little strong. If we all work together and don't split, this might be the start of
okay.
game for me. But I don't know.
You got everybody.
It's like, who do you trust? Who do you not trust?
I think we're waiting on the mayor.
Cassie,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if my battery is going to hold up through this meeting. I'm on less than about a third. I didn't bring my charger. Do I need to run home for that?
Or you can come in here with me.
Don't matter to me.
If
I'll
it
go
does,
to it gives dead. What do you think?
yeah, that'll be fine.
All right.
Hey, what kind of battery do you, I mean, what kind of phone do you have?
He's on a laptop.
A laptop.
Okay. What kind of laptop?
Hewlett Packard.
Okay. All right. I was thinking maybe we had one here, but I don't think we do.
I didn't even think about bringing it. Maybe we'll have a short meeting. I ain't betting on it.
I'm gonna call the mayor.
Jay, apparently you were betting on it.
Hey. Maybe short for me, hasn't it?
You can join by phone.
While Cassie is getting the mayor on, I got news today that the mayor pro tem of Siler City, Larry Cheek,
Same as that.
passed away today.
Oh no, it's got that dang plug.
No.
Plug. That might be it right there.
Yeah, that's the doctor.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you for mentioning that. I got the news probably about an hour ago, and yeah, it's a loss for Siler City for sure, and
Yes.
Washington County. Larry was a good man.
Yes.
Yes, he
He was
was
a very
good.
effective commissioner.
All right.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. One.
That seems so sudden.
He had a
Apparently
massive heart attack.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Larry Cheek.
Yeah. Mayor pro tem of Siler City,
Mm.
Larry Cheek.
Oh yeah, I know Larry.
The mayor did not answer. I'm gonna try again.
There he is.
He's on there.
Yeah, he's connecting.
Okay. We're ready.
Is everyone on?
Yes.
All right. Very good then. I'm going to turn a light on so I can see. It's getting dark. Okay. So I would call to meeting the regular meeting of the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, May 26th. And as our custom, even virtually, we will have a moment of silence. All right. Jay, you're there at Town Hall. Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Certainly. I'll see if I can get a little more view over there. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So, I would entertain a motion to either accept or to modify the consent agenda.
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to proceed with the public hearings for SP.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Kaylee Mulan's here, guys. I'm going to share my screen with y'all. Oh, okay, somebody else is sharing it. Okay, that works too. Oh, wait. Okay, you guys can't see the screen, can you?
No.
Okay, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So Cassie, I don't know.
Let me go in. You should be good.
Okay. Okay, yeah, now it's let me. Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So Mosaic has proposed to construct a multifamily apartment building with a parking deck level and an amenity store along Mosaic Boulevard. The parcel is located within 500 feet of an exterior boundary. The site plan for the proposed multifamily development is currently under review by staff and is expected to go to the Board of Commissioners on June 8th. And this is the full site plan, the full site layout plan for Mosaic Individual Lot Space 2. The Chatham Park Master Plan states that for uses which would otherwise require a special use permit throughout the rest of the town's planning jurisdiction, and which are located within 500 feet of an exterior boundary of the Chatham Park PDD, a public hearing must be held on the boundary transition treatments and the proposed use. The proposed multifamily building site is within 500 feet of an exterior boundary, so review of the site plan must include a public hearing to provide interested parties with an opportunity to comment on the proposed boundary transition treatments and the use. The action required is to conduct the public hearing and to send to the planning board. Please note the applicant and the engineer are here and they would also like to comment. Also, please remember written comments must be read into the record. So if the applicant and engineer would like to speak, or if you all would like to read the comments into the record, I don't know which one would go first.
Thank you, Kaylee. This is Mark Ashton with the CE Group. Good morning. Good evening, board members and staff. I think Kaylee's done a good job of explaining that this was a situation where in the Chatham Park elements, they agreed that anything that was subject to a public hearing would need to be conducted. So in this particular instance, we have planned all along to construct a multifamily building on the eastern portion of the Mosaic property, and the Chatham Park boundary is basically just north and east of us. The Carolina Living and Learning Center is just east of us, and then there's a residential property to the north. Fortunately, there is a buffer, existing stream buffer, both to the north and east of us, and we've actually, a member of our team conducted a Zoom session with the CLLC and advised them of what we were planning to do. This matches basically what we had submitted in the master plan to y'all for review. Some of the board members weren't on the town council at that time, but we had shown a building in this location with a pond to the east of it and then the buffers. So CLLC did not have any issues with what we were proposing. And so we're just simply moving forward with the process. The closest building on CLLC is about 540 feet to the east. As the crow flies, that particular building is their administrative and training building. The residential buildings are actually further east of that location. And then there's a residential structure to the north of us, and it's the closest structure. There's about 830 feet apart. And in the email that I sent out this afternoon, we included the aerial so you could just see sort of the expanse of vegetation that exists in both directions. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Do we have any written citizen comments?
For the public hearing, no.
Okay. There are no further questions. I would entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
Motion to go out of public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the regular agenda.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we have any written citizen matters tonight?
No.
Okay. So I have nothing tonight. Michael, anything with the ADC or your other pieces?
Yes. The EDC is just about wrapping up their strategic plan. I think the last one they did was 2008. Could be wrong about that, but they've been working for months on the latest one, and it's very close to completion. So that will be coming out soon. Got the RPO meeting dated for or scheduled for June 11th in Pittsburgh. I'll be attending that if it's live, and if not, I'll do it by Zoom. And just to say a little something about Main Street, we've got 4 facades basically ongoing at the corners of Hillsborough and Salisbury and Hillsborough and the traffic circle. So you'll see 4 of the buildings getting dressed up. And tomorrow night we should vote on an artist's mural to be painted on the side of the visitor center. So we'll bring some additional mural art to downtown. That's it for now.
I have one question, if I could, Mayor.
Yes, of course.
Regarding the Main Street, the Welcome Center. So are there going to be offices in there or just one place for the individuals to do the welcome? To welcome people, visitors and all of that. What's going to be on the inside of the building? Commissioner Fiocco, if you
Yes.
are still here.
I can describe that for you. There are 3 offices in the building. There is a break room, if you will. There is a bathroom, and then there is an open area that will be available for the visitors. It will be equipped with furniture and with some big screen TVs that will be advertising the sights and sounds of Chatham County and Pittsburgh. The offices will host the Main Street, and we had thought that the Chamber of Commerce would share a space with us and possibly the Board of Tourism. The Chamber is working on a 5-year plan, and so they didn't want to commit to that office space until they had finished that plan. They think they're going to be finishing it this summer, but we're very receptive to the idea. They've got a presence, of course, in Siler City, and with all the growth going on in Pittsburgh, it seems to make sense that they should have a local location in Pittsburgh. So we look forward to hopefully sharing the space with them. And then hopefully we can get tourism or some other group in there to promote Pittsburgh and all of Chatham County.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Anything from PBA, Michael?
No.
Okay. Pamela, anything with Triangle J Council or?
I have a Zoom meeting actually tomorrow with them at 7. And so I'll send something to you all via email, the summary of the meetings.
Okay. John, anything on climate change?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Any other commissioner reports? Okay. Bob, would you want to do your manager report now, please?
Yes, I'd like to bring you up to date on the application for Town Hall and USDA loan. We have completed the phase 1 study. It was recommended to us to go ahead and test the 2 wells on the property, anticipating that USDA will ask us to do that. So that'll hopefully save us some time. It'll take a couple weeks to do that. That was authorized to go ahead today. We anticipate getting the draft of the lease to the county sometime this week. So hopefully we can wrap that up in a couple weeks also. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So for first item then on old business is the traffic calming policy. Bob, that's you as well.
I'm going to ask Trudy Johnson, interim police chief, to make the presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. What I did was we took the revised policy that you had, or the previous board had looked at back in October 2019, and with the suggestions that you made at the last meeting, we developed this plan. I've talked to the planning department and utilities department, and they are both on board with this, and we're presenting it to see what your thoughts or concerns on it.
Any questions for the for the chief?
No, I'll just comment that I did send out an email, I think, to the entire board and to Chief Johnson about my observations on the plan. I was a little confused about some of the terminology and wondered if it was, cross-referencing the same idea but using different words. And so just had some questions that I forwarded on to in an email and a markup of that PDF. So I would just leave those comments on the table to be addressed.
Okay. Commissioner Pioka, I did get that email and I went through. This policy was taken from ours and a couple of other departments or towns. So the service area is what we are determined to be the area that we're concerned with or what we're looking at as far as the traffic issues. I did see the comments you had made as far as changing or using neighborhood. The area of influence was actually supposed to be the service area. And the neighborhoods, I've gone in and I've addressed those. I've just changed those to the service area. Okay. So what we're doing is we're looking at I guess, a neighborhood as a whole. For instance, Chatham Park, Sherwood Forest that we're dealing with right now with traffic issues. And I was looking at that as a neighborhood, but I needed to actually just put that as a service area is what we're, looking to address as far as those issues. And also the other, I'd seen where you'd made the comment about the 25 mile per hour or less on page 1.
Yeah.
When I did that, I was thinking that speed tables are usually, I had speed tables on my mind. And speed tables are usually used at 25 miles per hour or less. I can change that to 35 if y'all want to. And then that would let us also look if a neighborhood or service area comes to us and says that maybe they want to look at lowering the speed limit in their area. So we could, leave it at 35 or put it to 35. And then that way that would give us some room to work as far as if they did want to lower the speed limit.
I think that's a good idea.
And there was, like I say, most of the time when the neighborhood I had I've changed that to service area just to try to, if there's any confusion as far as that, but in my mind, I had it was all interchangeable. But I have gone in and changed those to service area just to try to make sure there's no issues there. And as far as the petition, or I'm sorry, the traffic calming request form would, it said something about the maps. I did change that back to the police department.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, it was supposed to be us, and I just overlooked that.
One question too on the service area, like in the example of Oakwood and Park, would that also include like Hillcrest Drive and Kensington, kind of roads that feed in that would need to, I guess, go through traffic calming measures to exit?
It would. That's what we would look at as the majority of the neighbor or the either landowners or renters, whoever, whatever the case may be. But if they're using that road, you know, to go to and from work or home, or to go home, then yes, we would look at those too, as far as, you know, having a say in whether they think there's an issue there.
Okay. And then it said posted speed limit too. Do we have all the roads posted? I know the standard is 25 if it's not posted, but are all the roads posted?
If they're not posted, it's 35.
Okay.
And if they are posted, then, you know, it's usually either 25, but not. I don't think all the streets in Pittsburgh are posted. So, like I say, it's the majority of them are still 35, except when you get into the neighborhoods.
So maybe since we're bumping it up to 35, maybe we just remove the word posted, so it would cover sort of all streets by default that aren't posted.
Okay.
And then I was wondering as well, I didn't see it on here, but are we anticipating a fee associated with this application, or as it advances further in the process?
I don't, as far as us doing the policy or, you know, just on our end of it, I don't anticipate a fee or see a fee. This is basically, I mean, it's just a step up from if we did get an actual speeding complaint, you know, instead of just sending officers out to go and look at either writing tickets or, you know, doing some kind of speed enforcement to have something on paper. I did see in other policies that if some neighborhoods are wanted like a design or, you know, on a speed hump or something like that, then, you know, then they could, you know, they could incur some of the costs. But as far as just our regular traffic calming devices, I don't think we would, or I don't think we should.
Okay.
And I do plan on that whenever we do get this, that as far as the forms, I want to make them PDF fillable. That way they can, you know, the public can either come by here if they don't have access to where they can print it off at home or either fill it out at home. But, you know, just to make it easier for the citizens to be able to fill it out and just email it straight back to us if they'd like.
Anything else on this for the chief?
My only other comment was, it says after we receive the petition and you monitor for 30 days, if the issue has been addressed, no further action will be required. So what does that require, or what is defined as addressed, I guess, after the area submitted a petition saying that it's an issue?
If they submit an issue, we can, like I said, there's different. We can go in and we can have I guess like a town hall meeting with the neighborhood. We can actually send, you know, officers just to kind of monitor as far as speed enforcement. We can send the radar trailer or a speed measuring device in, you know, just to measure the devices. Because sometimes, you know, when these you know, smaller roads, people may think that people are running 50 miles an hour by their house and they're only running, you know, 25 or 30, you know, right around the speed limit. So just to kind of validate that the issues that we are getting, And then we can go from there as far as going to the next step of, you know, looking at speed humps or stop signs or whatever the case may be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Shorty, thank you very much for your work on this. I really appreciate you picking this ball up and running with it. I'm curious, maybe I just missed it, but if there's a place where I'm pleased that we've got a section in there where recommendations are made that the public citizens can take certain actions to improve conditions in their neighborhood themselves. Some ideas are offered there. Where is your thinking as regards these temporary or movable radar activated solar powered speed signs? I know that we own 2 of them, but do you feel that that's something that we could recommend to neighborhoods to do on their own?
Yes, I mean, we could do that. Like I said, that was, once we had talked to the area representative, like I said, that could be a first move that we do is, like I say, put the radar units in there. And I mean, we can suggest in our talks with them that, you know, if they would like to purchase a unit like that, you know, we could direct them that way if they wanted to. But I guess that would be, you know, just up under the educational part, or that I was thinking as far as, you know, their options. You know, there's other options in writing everybody a speeding ticket. So
absolutely.
So that, like I say, we're just looking at that.
Okay.
Well, and I would, I guess, question the ability of a citizen to put an object in the public right-of-way. They may not do it in the most safe way, and it seems to me that the police department should be involved in posting such a device that you described, John, and not that homeowners can just, you know, in a little bit of anger go and put something out in the middle of the road or on the side of the road that isn't safe. So I think that's an important feature, and I'm sure insurance companies would appreciate the official act and not just any citizen doing such.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. I guess my thinking is that at some point in future, town's going to get busy and there'll be additional neighborhoods that these problems might crop up in as we grow. And if an HOA is motivated enough and sufficiently funded enough to pay for this kind of equipment themselves, I would hope that we could find a way to facilitate that in a safe and proper manner.
Well, there are mechanisms we use today called encroachment agreements that allow people to do particular activities within the public right-of-way. So that could be a mechanism, and it's, you know, would involve them preparing a little plan that says, this is where I want to put this thing, this is what it is. So I think that could be an approach to satisfy that need.
I think this policy actually covers that situation as well, where if the recommendation were to include a speed sign, then the neighborhood would be allowed to pay for it in lieu of waiting to get in the town cycle for paying for it. But I think it would still fit in this process as outlined, where the neighborhood could agree to the town's recommendations, which may be a sign like that or whatever the recommendation is. And if they could fund it to essentially make it happen faster, if that were the case.
Well, I think as long as, yeah, no objection to the funding part, but just the placement part, that it be in a safe location.
Agreed. I mean, I think that recommendation would come from the police department or the planning department.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chief Johnson, I have one question or comment, basically. There are people which complain about speeding in apartment complexes. Mm-hmm. So would that be a way for you all to probably provide information to those individuals regarding this information? I know they can't we can't do the speed bumps there, but perhaps we could do some type of one of those devices that tells the people to slow down basically and monitor their speed, things such as that. Because in some neighborhoods, there are, within that apartment complex, there are people which speed quite a bit. And people are concerned about that as well. And I know they are not applicable for this particular type of petition, but it would be helpful to just provide information or just do a public, just a meeting, a town meeting with them per se within the apartment complex to expose them to the different things and talk to them about just slowing down and maybe putting that speed, putting that there to monitor their speed as well.
Yes, ma'am. We'd be glad to do that. I mean, we can, like I say, it's just like you said with we couldn't, as far as putting speed humps in there, but we'd be glad to go talk to whatever apartment complex, and we can't put the radar trailer in there because it's still, inside the city. So we can definitely do that to try to help them out.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else for the chief? Chief, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Did you share your final draft with us at the next meeting? Or
Yes, sir.
put it in our packet?
Yeah, I'll like I said, I made the changes, and I'll get that to Mr. Morgan, and he can send it y'all's way.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is affordable housing, and I hope you all got my email up early this morning, but the Board of Commissioners in November 13th, 2018 approved a set of final recommendations, and those final recommendations were to authorize the establishment of an affordable housing board, authorize the establishment of a 501c3, and approve the proposed incentive package and principle subject to the Board of Commissioners approving the ordinance that would enable those. And in the time since then, the board endeavored over a series of, the task force endeavored over a period of time to prepare an ordinance. And to be quite frank with you, we failed in being able to come up with ordinance language. And so we're at the point right now where we need to get an ordinance prepared for this board to consider and review. And it seems to me as chair of the task force that there are two options. One is to see if Mr. Morgan can provide an assessment of whether or not he believes we can prepare this ordinance in-house. And if the answer to that is no, whether this board wants to consider funding the writing of this ordinance through an outside party that specializes in such activities. And so that is the issue that is really before this board tonight, the question of how we want to proceed with this ordinance writing. So, any comments?
Jim, I do have a few comments. Just reading over, good job on this. Thank y'all for your hard work. I just had a couple of questions on just a few of the fees and maybe the property tax rebates. If I can go over real quick, you maybe can add the one question I had was on the expedited review. It doesn't have any time frame. Does it mean we're going to put the affordable housing in front of anything in front of the planning board? That was just a quick question. The other question is on the fee waivers up to 100%. Best I remember, several months, maybe a year, Habitat came to us with the same, pretty much the same, wanted 100% of their fees to be Shoot. Well, we didn't have to pay them, and we turned that down. But I think that may be something we want to look into on giving up that, because fees do pay a lot of our payroll here in the town. And the other one is the property tax rebate. Is that normal to give ad valorem taxes for 10 years, 100%?
Well, if you're asking, is it normal in affordable housing projects elsewhere?
Is it? Or is this just something that Pittsburgh made up?
No, that's in fact in place in communities across the South in particularly, and some in the Midwest.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I think the forgiveness component is only on the difference between the pre-development value and the post-development value. So
that's correct.
There are taxes being paid, just not on the new improved site. So it's a break on it. It's not a complete abolition of the revenue.
That is correct.
Mayor?
Yes.
Bob Morgan. I haven't had an opportunity to review this draft with Jeff Jones or Paul Messick. There are some things I'm concerned about, the legality in North Carolina to do some of these things. And also at this time, I can't tell you how much it would cost to, if we go outside, what it would cost. So I would need some time to look into those items before I could make a recommendation to the board.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, Bob, if you could look into those and then get back to us.
And I know we may, what Mayor Nass is talking about is the recommendations that were made, and that includes the various tools, but not any draft that was part of the packet today.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but
we're just looking at those final recommendations and how we turn those final recommendations into an ordinance. That the idea is that once that's put in as a draft ordinance, then it will come before the board for its review. And I'm sure there'll be some suggested changes here and there, and go back for a final piece then to put in place. That's the idea behind the thing. And I would appreciate Mr. Morgan reviewing and making some determinations on the best way forward in getting the draft ordinance prepared.
And I would just like to echo what I think became part of the task force mantra, and it is published in the recommendations, that Pittsburgh be a place where we figure it out rather than say no.
Yep, that was the...
So if we can approach it with that can-do attitude, there's a way to get affordable housing as part of the fabric of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate to have a 9% tax credit program approved for Pittsburgh in this last go around. That is a very competitive process, and we were very glad to get that. And I think that's going to be a real help to our town. And I think I might just reiterate that the something that was said a year ago or so, and that is that the need for affordable housing within Pittsburgh will continue to grow along with the development that is coming our way, because so many of those jobs that will be in the restaurants and the hotel and some of the medical offices will be relatively low paying jobs. And if we want people to be able to live here, that work here, we certainly will see that need increasing over time, not decreasing. So I think that's the thing. So really tonight, the thing was to get this back on the radar, and to ask our town manager to give us an idea of what he can see in terms of in-house capabilities and what it might cost us to go outside to get this written. And I think it's important that we find someone, some group that specializes in North Carolina law and ordinances so that we can get this cleaned up. And then the idea would then, once that draft is complete, regardless of who does it, that it come back before this board for a review with suggestions and comments before it would come back for a final.
Yeah, I would very much like to hear formal comments and analysis from our attorney and from our staff about this proposal package. So I appreciate Mr. Morgan's point.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess to step back a little bit, some of the history I'm not familiar or as familiar with. So these, what you sent out is what's in our packet, the product after
what was in the packet was a kind of a first draft of what a language of an ordinance might look like, and it was unsatisfactory. And I shouldn't have put it out there in that condition. I should have gone just with the recommendations.
Okay, so the recommendations are from that November 2018.
Yes, that's correct. It's the final recommendations of the task force. And the only work the task force has done since then is to attempt to develop ways to write ordinance, and being unsuccessful in doing that.
Okay, so I guess unfortunately there hasn't been work product in that last 18 months or so that we can use towards this ordinance?
No.
Did you get the updated information that the mayor sent, Kyle?
I did, yes. I got that email today.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
and actually, on what you had sent out before too, I had reached out to Stephanie Watkins Cruz and Erica Brown from the County Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and they provided some feedback I can share as well. But they're happy to be involved in the creation of this or commenting on this, and have a lot of.
Yes, Stephanie's already in it. She's already part of the task force.
Been on our task force from the beginning as a county rep.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Next item on the agenda is board directives. An ordinance regarding disconnections and late fees, delinquent fees. Bob, is someone going to address that?
Heather just wanted to know, she's on now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know, as of right now, the governor's executive order, which was also postponing fees and disconnections, is set to expire on June 1st. And I just wanted the board to advise if they were thinking of amending that or stopping the directive that we have from the board to delay the fees or postpone, not be charging any fees. Or if you want to continue it and we, revisit in another month or two.
I'm very grateful for you asking this, Heather Meacham. Thank you. My understanding of the economy is that it is still quite fragile, that there's an awful lot of folks who are out of work, short of work, or unable to get back to work. And so I would certainly be open to a discussion of an extension. What are other board members' feelings?
Well, as for me, I think we should extend it because even though the executive order is set to expire June 1st, I agree with Commissioner Bonnets. There are people which are still out of work or receiving less pay than they usually receive. So I just don't think it would be fair to say June 1st, that executive order and the order which we are under basically expires in reference to these delinquent fees without proper notification. And I don't think that would be proper notification. I think we need to go to extend it.
I agree with extending it, but I think we also need to talk about the policy for when it does eventually end or sunset, and with the realization that people aren't going to be able to pay what they owe at that time, and what our pay over time policy or forgiveness policy or whatever that may be when this does end, that people may have multiple months built up of bills that have not been paid, and don't have the ability to pay that backlog immediately upon it ending either. So I don't know if there's any suggestions from what other towns are doing or things like that, but that's something we really need to consider when this does end.
Yes, we will. So even though our policy, the policy adopted by the board is obviously separate from the executive order, but we still have to abide by the executive order. And so under the executive order, any of the amounts that were past due during the governor's executive order, we have to allow them, they don't specify the amount of time, but we have to allow a certain amount of time, which the town determines for those customers to repay. So essentially we set up payment plans for the amount that they were unable to pay during the time period that we designate. And then, and we can set more time. So if their balance is higher, say they owe $500, we can allow them more time than somebody that owes $250, and vice, and if the amounts are higher than that, we can allow more time. So we can, we haven't gotten those particulars set out, but we can write up an internal policy for that. And we will have, we can say, pay balances outstanding of 500 or less, you have, 6 months or 8 months or whatever to repay that amount, and they have to continue paying their current bill as well. That's our concern is just depending on how long we keep this policy going. We do have some customers that are really going to have very sizable balances. So that's also something just to consider as well.
Yes. Ms. Meacham, what would be the 6-month mark? Can you remind us when we started this?
We started, the board adopted it, right, I think it was the second meeting in March, I believe.
Okay.
So, and the governor's executive order started March 31st, and so it goes till June 1st. And then, and ours will end whenever the board advises, adopts a new ordinance to amend it again. And my suggestion would be that whenever the board adopts that, then we have at least a 30-day window, because we would need to send letters and notify customers that this is going to start up again, and that they have to sign up for a payment plan to take care of their balances.
Yeah.
When is phase 3 scheduled to come online?
Indefinite, but I understood it to be a minimum of 8 weeks.
Minimum of 8, okay.
But Mr. Morgan, you may know better than me.
I'm hearing the same.
But indefinite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the governor's PowerPoint said something about 4 to 6 weeks after phase 2. So I don't know if that's, it's a little bit different, but that's what I picked up.
What I'm kind of hearing from the board is that we keep our policy as it is for now, and perhaps revisit it then in another 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Is that?
Yes, and we can add it to the agenda again, maybe the first meeting in July, or no, we won't have a first meeting in July. So
Okay.
either the second meeting in July, or at the end of June, we can decide.
Right.
That can be determined later.
Okay.
Let's look at the end of June, put that on the agenda again, and play it by ear. But
okay.
And Ms. Meacham, to the extent that you're able, do you think you might share some insights into statistics?
So I can let you know that I haven't run a recent report, but as of as of May 1st, we did have approximately 2 times the number of accounts past due that we normally do.
Okay.
So, and we do know, just because, I mean, we do know that we believe that some people are just taking this as an opportunity not to pay. We don't know for sure, but we're also going to probably send out letters to encourage people to just make partial payments if they can, because any type of payment would help so that their balances do not get too high. We did have a few customers that thought that the governor's executive order meant we were waiving their entire bill. So we've been trying to clear that up as much as we can with customers.
Okay. Anything else this item? All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, now, the next item on the agenda is the Water Quality Task Force report to board and discussion.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is Cindy, and good evening, Mayor and board members. I'd like to sort of start off just with a little introduction apropos of what I listened to your last meeting and have had emails with Jim Noss regarding the discussion of the task force meetings. And so I just wanted to address those very quickly. And we have several people who would like to speak this evening. First of all, as you know, from January to March, looking at our minutes, we had introductory speakers and informational kinds of meetings because the 17-member task force that was appointed, some people were very much on top of the issue, others were brand new to the issue, but had strong feelings about community and schools and things like that. So the first few meetings were, quite frankly, educational meetings to bring us all up to an even playing field. Our meetings in April and May, as you will see by the minutes, getting into more information in detail. And I know that you all are fully aware how complex this issue is. And that as a result, it has taken us a little bit of some time to boil down and get down to brass tacks, so to speak. I looked at the charge that was given. There was a lot of discussion about that at your May 11th meeting, and the charge that you gave that was developed in 2019 and that the board passed expires on the 30th day of June. I believe that we would probably need an extension on that for perhaps 2 to 3 months. We certainly intended to have 2 meetings each month, and we started out doing that in February. And perhaps we did in part of March, but the fact was the virus has set us all into a different, different mode. But tonight we have for you, I've asked Katie Bryant to co-chair this task force with me. Katie has a report to make regarding activities that the task force is doing that she's doing individually. And then we'll have Emily Sutton to talk about upstream matters. We'll have Karen Strasser talking briefly about establishing a relationship with Chatham Marketplace for RO water sourcing. And if we have Adam Pickett on our Zoom meeting tonight, he can report on pilot testing schedule and results. So Katie, do you want to take it away from here then? Katie, are you with us?
I believe you're still muted, Katie.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There we go.
I was actually asking Emily if she wanted to start with upstream questions that she had in regards to.
If you want to give an overview first, Katie, I can jump in afterwards with the upstream.
Yeah, the biggest thing right now that we're looking at is kind of like a three-part process to dealing with the water. The biggest, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be the Water Task Force building downstream coalition with communities affected by the water, which could then potentially put pressure on the state to actually make changes to regulatory numbers. Because in many cases, our numbers that we have in terms of some of these regulations just aren't, they just don't cut it. They're not satisfactory in terms of health and our risks, our risk factors. So that's one part, which I was actually I've been heavily involved in, is building a coalition downstream. Another part is having pressure on upstream towns. So going directly to the mayors, the water treatment facilities, and the town managers, and making sure that they're aware of these issues. And then another part would be a short-term fix, which would be to get RO drinking water fountains in the schools, and then potentially RO fill stations here in the town while we await Adam Pickett's results, which I think are coming out in August for his pilot study. And I think at this point, he said the systems are working great, but he won't know until August really what a long-term fix would be. We've looked at different water sources too, changing to water sources, but it looks like that's not really, like I said in the report, it's not going to be a short-term thing. So to get safe water to the town, those are our options right now, is to fix the school water and have quick water available in fill stations. Does anybody have any questions? No? Emily, did you want to talk about
I can jump in.
You're doing?
Well, hold on. I was trying to talk. I was just muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But do we have data? I think I've heard that there are some locations in town where samples are being taken from the water system. So data that is provided after it is treated at our plant, and how successful or unsuccessful that is, and what it's delivering to the citizens, whether it be in businesses or in homes. Do we have a bunch of data there that tells us what the quality of the water is coming through our system?
So I can answer that. So Dr. Heather Stapleton did some research to show that she correlated the drinking water from the taps in several homes throughout Pittsburgh, and that was with no treatment. This was before the pilot study started. And the pilot study also, as far as I've understood it, those are not going through the infrastructure for the town's supply right now. So the pilot study that Adam Pickett is working on is really just a very minimally testing the water for what systems work the best. So that doesn't have, that's not looking at the way that the water is going through into the homes. So Dr. Stapleton's research took samples from the end of tap in some homes before the pilot study started. So we do have that research. It's not being removed. I mean, there's really high levels in the raw water and in the finished tap water, according to Dr. Stapleton's research. And that's all available. We've made that available on our website.
Which website is that?
That's the website that we linked into the interim board report, and I can send that to all of you in the chat right now, actually. So it's just here in the public record. But Adam Pickett also has some preliminary research, which is—
You posted that on a website without providing it to the board?
So that information has been, that was not our research. That was Dr. Heather Stapleton's research that she published separately. So we didn't have rights to that data. You know, that's her research that she's published. And
So
it's
you're
public
just
record.
linking us to her website?
Yes.
Okay.
And Adam Pickett's research is very preliminary, like Katie said earlier, but he has provided some information just based on a few months that he's been doing the research.
And Katie, you had indicated in January that there are some issues with the testing methods and like the ability to trust the data. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was referring specifically to upstream, well, upstream like violators. I wouldn't want them to have choice of what laboratory. It's just a conflict of interest. So I was saying if that was really early on before I was kind of caught up with everything Emily's been doing. But I was saying if we had their water being tested, it needed to be tested by somebody independently chosen, not by them, but someone else, just because they could, you know, be a friend in the lab. It's just not a good.
Okay, sure. So, but no concerns about the data that we're being provided now?
No, oh, no.
Okay.
And I'm happy to talk about upstream sources, but I wanted to leave some space for questions before we get to that, just about the general report that we sent, or if there's any specific questions before I jump into that.
I definitely would like to hear about upstream. Is it fair to say we would not have these issues in our drinking water but for upstream contributions?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's always going to be discharges though, and there should be some treatment at the drinking water level as well. So removal of these compounds at the source is obviously our number one goal at Haw River Assembly. We don't want it in the surface water, let alone the drinking water. But that is a long-term solution. I mean, we're working with City of Burlington to find the sources the industrial sources that are coming into their wastewater treatment plant. And so we have to look at the individual sources in order to find how to eliminate these from getting into the effluent in the first place. So we're still working with them. They're investigating sources, and but the levels aren't zero above Burlington. So we're still going to have these problems. And this has been an issue for how many years have I been presenting this data? So at least 3 years we've known about this publicly. So it would eliminate a lot of the problems if the upstream sources were eliminated completely, but that's a very long-term solution, longer than a reverse osmosis treatment solution in town of Pittsboro.
And may I add that it's nothing that we can specifically do ourselves except to lobby the state of North Carolina for the kinds of protection that they have the power to create upstream. Is that correct, Emily?
It is, yeah. So, I mean, we're still working with Burlington, like I said, to identify their sources, but it will take a lot of time to figure out what those sources are. And the more voices coming to City of Burlington, the more pressure there will be. So I don't know if you all have submitted letters or talked to the City of Burlington about this being an issue in Pittsboro, but it really does make a huge difference to hear from people other than Haw River Assembly and Southern Environmental Law Center that this is a problem. And that goes for the state level advocacy as well.
Yeah. Are you current with what is going on in the EPA regarding these compounds?
So that's moving pretty slowly. I mean, they're making, as far as I've known, the most recent update is that they're looking at setting MCLs, which are maximum contaminant limits or levels, I believe, for 2 of the compounds. So it's PFOA and PFAS. And those are not the compounds that we see in the highest levels in the HAW.
I have information that they are putting together, or have in fact put together, a group from both the air side and the water side, to do nothing but get involved with these compounds over the next 6 to 12 months. And there are a bunch of attorneys from the air side that have been assigned to the water side in this area. And I believe there was a court case out of the District of Columbia in the last 30 days that might have given some real impetus in this area. I'll see if I can't get those sources to you.
Yeah, they're finding it in food supplies too. It's in this last year, they've had to shut down, I believe, a dairy farm in 2 different states, New Mexico and I believe it was Maine, yeah, where the milk was full of PFAS compounds, and they had to shut it down.
And I'll just add that the PFAS testing network, that's the collaboratory with a bunch of different universities that was funded by the state a couple years ago, and they should be releasing some of their data late summer of this year. And there's 4 teams on that. One of them is air quality and how the PFAS compounds are transported through air and into groundwater. The other is about treatment and removal. That's one team, and the other is surface water. There's 2 other teams that I think the other team is just public community engagement and education and risk evaluation type of thing. So their research is statewide and should be released in June. But here we are in June and everything's been delayed because of COVID. So we'll continue to put all of the information that we collect, that everything that is going on statewide, out in the public. Anything that we produce ourselves or conversations that we have, I know that you all want to have first access to that before we go public with that, which is understandable. I will say that any information that we put out at Haw River Assembly, we're going to continue putting that out to the public. So there is a separation there with what is the research that we are partnering with outside of the Water Quality Task Force that will still be put in the public.
Understood, but I think your work on the task force is to deliver information to this board to help us, get informed, better informed, and make, critical decisions. So please bear that in mind. Now, one of the things that I find interesting or piques my interest is the idea that there are farms that have been shut down in other states because of the presence of this material. Mm-hmm. What authority did they use? Because I don't think that North Carolina recognizes these as substances that are regulated. So what do these other states, have they put in regulations restricting? Okay.
I mean, the EPA has a standard, I believe, just 70 parts per billion. But other states have changed their standards to be much smaller. So there's, I don't have the numbers memorized right now, but they're like 5 and 10 rather than 70 parts per trillion. And so I don't know if that 70 applies to water and food, or if the food restriction is different. That I'm not completely educated on. I just joined a PFAS coalition. It's a nationwide coalition, so I'm learning a ton right now. So hopefully I'll be able to answer that soon.
Okay. I can add to that a little bit, Katie. Yeah. So some states like Massachusetts have set a level of 70 parts per trillion in drinking water for total PFAS, which is the entire class, which is what we've been trying to get in North Carolina. And those specific farms, they were actually testing the biosolids as well. So the biosolids that were land applied to the hay is what was also in the milk. And so they were testing the biosolids and saw that the levels were really high. And then that sparked the investigation into the milk and the dairy production.
And we have that same issue here with biosolids. That's why during rain, we have such a high concentration in our river.
And so North Carolina is following the EPA's 70 parts per billion, did you say, or trillion?
It's trillion.
Parts per trillion. Wow.
That's just for PFOA and PFOS, which are the two, PFOA and PFOS.
And isn't that cumulative?
It is cumulative.
Yeah.
And then other states have reduced it to 5.
Yeah, their regulation. I believe one of them is 5. I can't remember what state it is, but
Vermont is 20 parts per trillion. That's one of the lowest. I don't know which one is 5.
It may be actually one of them that's 5, not the actual family or the class. I'll have to look it up though.
I think I read some time ago, maybe a year ago or more, that New Jersey was contemplating either 15 or 25.
I think it'd be helpful to see a list of current state limits throughout the U.S. And then, I think particularly if North Carolina is an outlier on that, we could really use that to put pressure on at the state level, or what the benefits that other states that have lower levels are seeing of that and the impact they're able to have.
I think I did provide that to the commissioners when some of you all met with me one-on-one, which I really appreciate. I know Jay and Pamela, I wasn't able to meet with you all before all of the COVID started, but I'm happy to reshare that packet. I do believe that I included the list in that packet as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please do reshare. Yeah, that would be helpful. Now I'm curious, do we know the EPA's basis for determining 70 is the magic number?
Can you speak to that, Emily?
I don't know the methodology behind that.
But that is regulatory?
It is regulatory. It's a total, so a combined total of PFOA and PFOS has to be below 70 parts per trillion. And there's been a bunch of scientists that have said that that's too high, and that includes our team. Sorry, my dog is barking.
Yeah, it's too high because those particular compounds in the PFAS family, those 2 compounds accumulate in the body. They don't break down in our lifetime. So they cause a lot more issues. Not every PFAS molecule does that. Some do break down faster than others, depends on the length of their carbon chain, but those in particular, they're alarming because they just don't. They stay in your system forever. Oh, you're muted, Michael.
And Emily, you were in the middle of your explanation about the EPA standards and the screen just froze on me. So I didn't get, I think what you were saying. Would you mind repeating? You started that you weren't sure what the basis for the EPA's numbers were, and then you froze.
Right. There's a thorough research team that looks at it's called a contaminant candidate list. And so they set limits or MCLs, a maximum contaminant level, for all of these different compounds. And I don't know how they came up with that exact number and what methodology they used, but it's received a lot of criticism from the scientific community saying that it's way too high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just explaining, I don't know if you heard me, as to why they say that's too high.
Yeah, why?
Those 2, PFO and PFOS, don't break down in your lifetime. They're called forever chemicals. So those concentrations stay in your bloodstream the same throughout your lifetime. and cause more issues, and they build up. So that's why a lot of scientists are pushing back, saying you can't set a limit of 70 parts per trillion if you have communities like ours, just for instance, where we're exposed to really high levels at certain times of the year. And then you just suddenly, just put a blanket 70. You can't do it, just doesn't make sense. Because the risks are different depending on how much exposure you have and how much is already built up. So I think that's one of the biggest arguments against it.
And Michael, just to add to that, one of my biggest takeaways from Dr. Stapleton's presentation was that we are only acting on what compounds we know about. She pointed out that there's probably a whole bunch of compounds that are out there that we don't even know to test for. So this is, possibly just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and the root of that is we don't operate under what Emily actually has schooled me on, which is the precautionary principle. So in other countries, before you can create chemicals and produce them and use them in manufacturing, you have to prove for 10 years that it's safe. We can make it, use it, produce it, put it in waste, and then we're doing all the work afterwards to say, oh, wait a minute, was this okay? So it's counterproductive. Dr. Knappe has said it's like a whack-a-mole system. He'll say in his research, as soon as he has one under control or identified and figured out how to filter it out, there's 15 more compounds behind him or behind that one that he's trying to figure out. So it's it's daunting when you start diving into the research.
Emily, I have one question. Did you get their test results back from the samples that were taken in Pittsburgh and the blood samples? I believe you guys got those. I don't know if you got them back or results or anything. I know we don't get no names, and that's fine, but do we have what that results were from that report?
So we do have the water levels, and we have the blood sample results from the first round. The second round has been delayed because all the university labs have been closed, but they're reopening, I believe, this month just for laboratory work. So we should have the end of those results by early summer.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Did you include any of that information in any of the minutes of the first round that you mentioned?
No, we didn't have that data until recently, and that's Heather's data. So, and Katie participated in that study, so I don't know if Katie, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, they haven't been, so when I reached out to her, she said nothing will be released. They had a conversation, the research team did, and realized that through the process, they didn't want to release anything until they formed a committee and sat down and discussed what they were seeing. So until that committee meets, I won't get my results.
Any idea of timing on that?
No, I don't. I'll reach out to her again though and confirm. I know she was having a hard time telling me only because of everything being shut down.
I was wondering if Karen wanted to, if we didn't have any further questions to Emily and Katie, Karen, do you want to speak to the RO water partnership with
Yes, please.
Chatham Marketplace? I think that was of particular interest to the board.
Yeah, so I think we had been discussing in the committee about this notion of making available clean water and dealing with sort of the equity issue of individuals who may not be able to afford like the water systems for the home, and how to try to address that. So an idea was floated about a partnership with the marketplace to see if, because they have a RO water source at the marketplace where you can go and fill up your big jugs or your small bottles of water that's filtered, RO filtered. And right now that the water there at that source costs 39 cents a gallon. And in talking to folks over there, they said there is a way that they could make that available for town residents if by chance they wanted to come and fill up, water, that the marketplace could then bill the town for the cost or whatever shared cost that the town wanted to pay for that water, and they could come up with some kind of system whereby someone would have to show a bill and an ID that has a matching address or something on it as a way of sort of verifying that an individual lived in the town, was on Pittsboro water, so that they could access that source of water through the marketplace.
So we're just in the beginning stages of those discussions, but that seemed to be a very important issue from your meeting on May 11th.
Yes.
Do we have Adam Pickett with us this evening? Adam?
No, he didn't. He wasn't able to join.
Okay.
He told me.
Bill Holman and I have volunteered to work on coalition building through a number of political resources, environmental resources, and Emily has also been in contact with our state delegation with respect to advocacy for clean water. Emily, are you able to discuss the legislative proposal that has been put before the legislature just recently?
I am, sure. So we were fortunate enough to work with a team to make our kind of dream bill for PFAS, and Pricey Harrison has put forward, of Guilford County, Pricey Harrison has put forward a PFAS legislative bill into the House of Representatives, and it was submitted last Monday. I can share that proposal with you. It's got several sponsors and co-sponsors, and there's also been a bill that's been submitted into the Senate. So both the House and the Senate have pretty sweeping PFAS legislative bills that have been put forward at the state level. And I can share those with you all. I'm actually making a list of resources that I'm sending you an email as we speak. So you should have it by the end of this meeting.
Emily, are those bills complementary?
They are, yes. So one is a PFAS elimination bill that would eliminate it in the industrial processes. Another is, I believe the other one is monitoring and a study bill. So there's three big categories there.
One of the other things that had been talked about, of course, were home RO systems. And we somewhat stopped looking at those, although one of our members, Chris Attack, is doing an examination of the various different kinds of systems for RO and the cost of those systems. But we came to a difference of opinion with respect to whether there could be town participation in helping to purchase systems for people who could not otherwise afford them. And initially, Paul Messick indicated that he did not believe that that qualified as a public use, which is required, of course, by municipal expenditures must always be public for public use and not for private gain. Mayor Noss came of a different opinion, and I thought, Jim, that frankly, that was a very interesting and articulate way of putting forward the idea that if somebody were to repay for an assistance getting an RO system, that might take away the private purpose and would not be considered to be a private expenditure, and it would be much more public. The other question was whether there'd be some liability involved in admitting, I think Paul Messick indicated that there could be some possibility of a interpretation that our water was not up to standard, which of course it is up to standards that are currently published. But the feeling was that, quite frankly, that has already been addressed and admitted by the town, that some of these emerging chemicals need to be addressed. So, but it does nonetheless lead us to the conundrum of who do we follow? Do we follow Paul Messick's or Mayor Nas's interpretation? And that's a policy decision that you all would need to make.
Yes.
Yeah, when I talked to the school board too, they had no indication or they really weren't going to move forward with anything in terms of getting RO systems in the schools until they formally heard from the town that there was an issue with the water. So I feel like forming a task force is very clear that there's something wrong with the water. So it's confusing. So I just want to add that I think that if we're going to move forward with upstream municipalities and confronting mayors upstream, that has to be answered. The question has to be answered: is there really a problem? Because the water task force can't move upstream and speak to anybody if the town isn't saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. We have to all be on the same ship. Same with downstream coalition. If I reach out to Sanford coalitions and speak with them, but they haven't heard from the town, I'm not really sure we'll get very far. So I highly encourage that the decisions made in terms of what direction and that we all need to take.
Well, I think you put it exactly right, Katie, that we're unsure what, I guess, what the level of the problem is. And that was the reason I think we put together the task force, was to help better understand what is the problem and
mm-hmm.
How risky is it? How dangerous is it? While we continue to do a study, which, the town is making a pretty substantial investment at the water plant to study, we need to be able to speak with an affirmative voice of exactly what the risk is and what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And, if it's coming from upstream, and it probably is, I don't think it's naturally occurring, that's something that I want to be able to find a way to address and to inform other people and to fight for these types of prohibitions on putting the stuff in the water to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
One community gets rid of it, the other one has to deal with it.
Yeah.
And we're here at the mouth of Jordan Lake, and a small town with not the greatest budget, the biggest budget, and yet having to incur substantial cost to remove something. And what I think we really need to be able to point to is, what is it we're removing and how dangerous is that material? Because there are those who say, there's no problem here, big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually have another call with Detlef coming up soon, because I feel like he did a great presentation he did a pretty phenomenal one, showing that he broke down the 3 issues, which is PFAS, 1,4-dioxane, and bromines, which is a byproduct of our cleaning process. And all 3 of those are not within standards and not safe. And I can come up with a great summary of those. I feel like in his slideshow, which I just looked at again that he gave us, I was taking notes so much, and then when I went back, the slideshow is lacking a lot of what he actually was talking about in the presentation. So I can get one together and send it to you. So maybe that would clarify some of the worry.
I think that would be incredible. That would be invaluable, honestly.
Okay.
And, you know, when we talk about standards, you know, we've heard tonight that the 70 parts per trillion is EPA and regulatory. If you're above that amount, you are in violation. I would love to know what the other levels are and where they come from. The EPA, do they come from the state? Do they, you know, because those are the kind of tools I think we need to be able to use to talk with people to understand the problem. Because there are those who say, you know, the water quality, we get brownie points. We get big scores on our water quality in Pittsburgh. So it's a really conflicting message.
Yeah. So can I just add quickly that, I mean, the presence of PFAS compounds in the Pittsburgh drinking water has been publicized pretty broadly for several years. So I'd hesitate to say that there's a lot of misconception about whether or not the water is safe. I think that's been pretty well publicized for the past few years. I will add that I would recommend that you don't put all your eggs in the one basket of just regulating upstream sources or waiting for the state to take action. Those are our end goals, obviously, but those goals could be 5 to 10 years out. And in the meantime, there's still this drinking water issue for the town of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I will say I've attended a couple of the PFAS network meetings, one of which I got to meet an EPA representative, and I was shocked when I found out how long he's been trying to change things in the state and nobody's listened to him. Shockingly enough, when I found out he had done a lot of research pulling from the Haw River, they use our river as a positive control in state laboratory testing. If they need to find PFAS or 1,4-dioxane, they come to our river because they know it's always going to be in high numbers. And that is alarming for me as a scientist. I was just floored. But there has to be more voices, unfortunately, speaking out. But I'll put that together for you. I feel like it'll help everyone see it. I asked Detlef in that meeting too, I asked Heather Stapleton and him, would you consider this a public health crisis in Pittsburgh? And Heather Stapleton said she will be more than happy to answer that once the blood results come back. So she said, I will readdress that and give you a statement. In the meantime, though, Detlef said, I will just let you know, from my standpoint, your water is undrinkable. And if it was a well in the state of North Carolina, it would have already been put out of service long ago. But you can't put a river out of service. So that's why we have people trying to fight for it.
And I know some of you attended the forum that we held back in the fall, and the state agency staff were up on the stage and said that they wouldn't drink Pittsburgh's drinking water. So this has been public for a while. And I misspoke earlier, the 70 parts per trillion is actually a health advisory. So it's not a regulatory limit, it's a advisory limit, which means that if it exceeds 70, they have to notify the public. It doesn't necessarily mean things are shut down, but it's the states that have these regulatory limits. The EPA just has an advisory limit.
I really appreciate the depth of this conversation. I, of course, know that this is one of many pressing topics that you all have. And I guess I would ask if there are any further questions, or do we feel that we've supplied a sufficient amount of information to give you better thoughts than what you had back on May 11th about what this task force has been doing. I think we've been diligent and complete and complex, and we'll try to stay in better communication with you on our minutes, but we would appreciate an extension of time on our task. As you can see, our plates are very full and there's much to be done. In connection with what Emily said, there is a truism that we're always downstream of somebody, and that we're always drinking somebody's effluent. And as unappealing as that expression is, it's nonetheless accurate, and we will always have this problem and need to remain diligent even after we solve this particular set of problems.
Katie, I do have a follow-up question. You said something interesting, that if our water was a well, the water came from a well, that well would be shut down by North Carolina standards?
Yes, correct.
I would love to see those standards that
I can
differentiate a private well versus a public water supply.
Yeah.
And a couple questions in regard to treatment as well. I do wish Adam was on here, but I know we're currently using some chemicals in the water treatment plant to combat PFAS. Do we know how effective those are? I guess Emily, I know you mentioned that it's still out in the distribution system. So is the effort that we're putting into those chemicals in the treatment right now worthwhile?
So the granularly activated carbon removes some of the longer chain PFAS compounds, but it doesn't address the shorter chain, which is what we're seeing most often in the highest levels. So it does remove some of the longer chain, but it's not getting at the real problem of the matter. And a lot of the research that Adam has been doing already that he's shared with me, and I think it's public, I would assume he's shared it with y'all, but it shows that all of the different treatments that he's been using so far have been really successful. But the reason that it hasn't been conclusive yet is because the replacement and the amount of money that goes into replacing those as they become oversaturated could make different systems like granularly activated carbon ineffective or cost prohibitive, because if you have to just load the system so often, then to get any results, then it's not cost effective.
Okay, and that was my question too in regards to RO. I know we've kind of talked about it as the presumptive treatment for homes or some other instances. Are we 100% sure that works for these chemicals in those situations, but it might be a difference technology at a utility scale until the pilot study is complete?
I don't want to speak for Adam's research, but I know that reverse osmosis has been the recommendation among the scientific community because it's most effective for the longest amount of time.
Yeah, and it's in place in places within North Carolina in major systems already, and is being used. I mean, it's not like you can't go look at it or get data somewhere, because it's there and it's in use and it's working every day. And Brunswick County went to complete reverse osmosis, and you go through that, but you're dumping stuff back into the water after it goes through your plant. And so you're not helping folks downstream all that much either. But the communities down in Brunswick County, if I understand correctly, got together and they all agreed that getting it out of the drinking water within Brunswick County was an important enough event that even recognizing that some of this was going to go right back in the river and affect some downstream communities was what they wanted to do. And I would suspect that there's some really good data out of Brunswick County since that system's been in there for a while.
I think CDM Smith told us that Brunswick was less concerned about that because their outfall is so close to the ocean. I don't think there's anybody downstream of them other than the ocean.
I don't know. I think there is, but I have to read the report, the information from Brunswick. Yeah.
I think the only problem we have is, which I'm curious to see what Adam's research says with the bromines. I think that was the only thing that RO may not be able to remove was bromine. So we'll see. But in terms of 1,4-dioxane and PFAS, it's pretty effective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much. This is such a complex issue, and I appreciate all the work that you all have done and look forward to those reports that you're going to provide for us, especially when you were talking about the well water versus the river.
Mm-hmm.
And that I really would definitely like to see that as soon as we could get that. That would be very, very helpful.
Okay.
It was my understanding that RO didn't do well with the dioxane.
That was initially what I had heard too, but that's not the case. Apparently it's
well, Adam's research hasn't been looking at 1,4-dioxane. It's just looking at PFAS compounds.
But in general, though, I believe reverse osmosis systems can remove 1,4-dioxane.
Yeah, I was obviously Adam's research isn't been reported yet, so that was not the source of the information. I can't recall honestly where that came from, but that's what I thought we were told was RO was very effective with the PFOA and PFAS, but was not with 1,4-dioxane, and so there would probably need to be some kind of mix with carbon, I think, was what did well with 1,4.
I think that was initially what Detlef had come up with.
Okay.
And then further research. When he initially brought, or did his first presentation here, I think, to Pittsburgh years ago, I think that was in what he was initially seeing, but things changed in different research. It showed that it was removed, but I'll definitely follow up with him. His last presentation, he said the same, that RO can remove it. So I'll confirm that with him.
Thank you.
The last I had heard, Michael, was exactly that the RO did both really well.
Okay.
Well, we'll continue to report back to you. We'll provide you with these things. Katie's been making a list, and if there's other material that you're particularly interested in, we'll be more than glad to supply it to you directly before our next meeting. It's second Thursday in June, and I expect we'll still be meeting by Zoom through June and July and maybe even into August. I would hope that at some point we'll be able to be back together again in person, but thank you for your support, and unless you have further questions, we'll say good night.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and all the time you're putting in on this. And I know you realize how important this is for the town. So the whole town owes a debt of gratitude for the work you're doing.
There's 17 very devoted people, and they, I think you'd be very pleased to see the way we've been operating. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional updates and reports. We have commissioner concerns, and then the budget message and recommended budget and proposed budget on the agenda. Bob, how did you want to proceed with that?
Well, the budget information is put in your package for you to begin to study in it.
Yeah.
We have the public hearing, the first meeting in June, and I don't know if the board wants to begin studying the budget at the first June meeting or want to have a special meeting to do that. I'd be interested in your guidance on that.
Yeah. In the past, hasn't the board, or I may be misinformed, had a sort of a special meeting or retreat, whatever you wanted to call it, to work
Workshop
on the budget in the past?
We have had workshops.
Yeah, workshop. That's what I was searching for, John. Thank you.
Sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know if we'd want to do that again. I would think that in the past they have been valuable in some ways.
Yeah. I think it's really, really important that we give this some really focused, concerted attention. Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for the email giving the heads up on some of the items that had to come out in the first draft. And I just want to say that I was concerned about it. And you know, this is the new reality. These are the realities that we face, prospects for reduced revenues going forward. But some of the items that had to be removed were really things that I think we'd been hurting over for some time. And I don't have them in front of me, but I remember specifically law enforcement and public works. And I hope that we can come together as a board to have a really focused conversation about these priorities with a decreasing funds pool.
Yeah.
John, I also agree with you that I think a work session would be well in order.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If we want to do that as a portion of a regular meeting or do something special. And I think, do we want to do it before our June 8th meeting? I think it's June 8th. Because we are very short in time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would suggest to the board that we don't adopt the budget to at least the last meeting in June. We'll get another month's worth of information on sales tax. Right now, the latest information we have is marked as sales tax. It was a little bit better than we anticipated, but at the same time, we don't know what. That's only a half a month of the closing of for the pandemic. So we're really interested in seeing what April looks like. And the information we get is 3 months behind. So
3 months old.
Pardon?
3 months old.
3 months old.
So our last meeting in June would be on the 22nd, right?
That's correct.
I know this is a sweeping generalization or sweeping question, but I would be curious to hear Mr. Morgan and Ms. Meacham's impressions of the value of the projections that have been offered to us by the League of Municipalities. And I don't want to put you on the spot about that right now. I'm just thinking when we sit down for this, I think it would be very helpful to get those kinds of broad perspectives and your seasoned judgment.
Yeah, I would say to the board at this time, we use that information as a guide, but at the same time, we were a little bit more conservative than what even the league recommended. The problem is nobody knows at this point in time. I think the league did the best they could with the information that they had. We rather play it a little bit more cautious, so we don't have to do anything drastic during the budget year. Our real hope is that it turns out better than what we anticipate, and that maybe during the budget year, if the revenues come in better than anticipated, the board still can amend the budget to do some of the things that it wants to do. You couldn't change the tax rate. The tax rate has to be set by June 30th. But if the sales tax comes in better than what we anticipate, then you could consider some of the items that were left out of the budget. And I would like to publicly thank Heather. She did all the heavy lifting on the budget, as I'm sure that you know, and has been a great asset to the town and to me in putting this budget together. And I was more of a consultant in this event, and she did all the, as I said, the heavy lifting.
Well, I would then thank Heather. I've gone through it, and I think it's a pretty, you know, nothing jumped out as horrible to me. So I'm sure that it took a lot of work to get to that point. It seems to me that the biggest drop in revenue is in the category of other revenues. Am I reading that correctly?
I don't have the sales tax is the biggest area.
Well, that's what I was kind of looking at, the local option sales tax. I think we've got it at 856,000.
Yeah, one of the things that helped us out a great deal is that the sales tax estimates that they made for the current budget were conservative enough that we didn't have as much of a loss in this current year budget as that we could have if we had made them closer. So that did nullify some of the impact on the budget.
Yeah, because I was noticing, you know, I like to always compare it to our previous year. And our previous year was, you know, 803. So we're projecting a local option sales tax increasing. And I hope that's accurate and not a.
Like they said, they were low last year.
Okay.
It took me a while to wrap my head around that too, but
okay.
The estimates were, two things happened. Is the first half of the year was better, much better than the previous year, and we haven't seen the full impact of the pandemic yet on the sales tax.
Okay.
So
yeah.
That's the reason for that.
Well, and I also noticed something that I think is odd, and that the ABC revenues are projected to be down, and it's my understanding ABC revenues are way up.
Yeah. Again, we were conservative on that.
Got it. Okay.
Well, and I think that is retail revenue too versus restaurant revenue, which is.
Yeah, I know.
So.
Right.
Yes, that's correct. It's just what they sell at the ABC store.
Well, yeah. Everything gets sold through the ABC store.
True.
Except beer and wine.
I have one question. It sounded like we didn't necessarily want to have an in-depth conversation this evening and put it aside.
I wasn't planning on doing that tonight.
Okay.
Because I would like to involve Heather in that discussion.
Do we want to? What's the pleasure of the board? Would you want to have that as a part of our next board meeting? Or would we want to have a special meeting for that?
Those are the two
options.
I'd like to try and do it perhaps overlapping the planning board meeting. Give it time away from our town board meeting.
I'm assuming we'll be Zooming on it until further notice.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's probably easier to schedule.
Yes, probably so.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps what we could do tonight, we could decide something tonight, or if not, perhaps we could consider it for a day or two and get send your suggestion on what you want to do, date and time wise, to me, and then we can get perhaps a consensus or at least a majority of how we want to proceed.
John, were you suggesting next Monday night?
I guess there would have to be that. If,
The planning board meets that night.
yes, planning board meets then. Mm-hmm.
So I think that means Jeff and Cassie, do you do the planning board meeting also? Okay.
I assist with them, yes.
Okay.
Oh, so that would be a conflict for you. Okay.
I do like to attend that as well.
Yeah.
They have a full schedule.
Well, I have Tuesday the 2nd wide open. So I'm happy to attend a Zoom meeting Tuesday evening, the 2nd.
Of June.
Yeah. Yeah, because the 8th is coming up. Was that Kyle? No.
So next Monday?
No, Tuesday.
Tuesday, next Tuesday. Week from now for a Zoom meeting on the budget?
Yep.
I have a conflict.
Okay.
Well, at what time would we be thinking?
Want to do it at 6? Does that work better?
I could do 6:30.
6:30? Let's do that.
On Tuesday the 2nd. Are others
okay?
Tuesday the 2nd?
Tuesday the 2nd, 6:30. Does that work for everybody? And we could put together, Cassie, another Zoom meeting just like
Yes.
this. And it's a work session, but we still have to advertise it.
Yes, I'll still advertise it.
Yeah. And make it available. I mean, people could watch online, I guess.
Paul, are you going to include Paul? Does he need to be there? Because he's not saying anything.
I don't think so.
No.
Do we need town attorney at our budget discussion? I don't think so. I mean, certainly he's welcome, but I don't think he's necessary.
Okay.
So we do that's the 2nd then at 6:30, and we'll do it remotely using Zoom.
Yes.
And Cassie will get out the little thing she does that tells us how to get on and how to get off and all that.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Any commissioner concerns? Commissioner Farrell, anything?
Yes, sir. As usual, I think this has been put on the back burners, but I'm just going to give you guys a little update. I talked to Chief Griffin on the ladder truck. I know we haven't, I have asked, I think Heather and Mr. Messick were supposed to get with him with some type of paper contract. I'm not sure all about the wording. Nothing has been done. Just to give you a little update on some pricing, we're expecting a 2% price increase by December, by the 1st of December, and by January the 1st, the truck could go up 10 to 14%. That's quite a bit of increase. If we ordered the truck in the next month or two, we're looking at 18 to 22 months before it would be in service. That's allowing 4 months for training, and that's just how far backed up they are.
Okay.
So I know it's a sore subject for everybody, but we do have to provide a service for our citizens. The Mosaic is coming online with some taller buildings. I know they'll be sprinklered, but sprinkler don't save everything. But that's all I got.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Jay, I thought or I guess the board in regards to that, I thought that we did agree when we talked with Heather last that they were going to draft up some type of letter that said that we would fund that. Obviously, it wouldn't be in next year's budget, but that we would commit to some type of funding like that to allow them to order.
Right. I mean, he has not heard anything from staff or Mr. Messick. And Mr. Messick's also our fire department attorney too.
Okay.
We'll take care of that letter. I apologize for it not being done.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Kyle, anything else?
Just to kind of state the obvious, yesterday was Memorial Day, and obviously I had a meeting today, and it was one of my first in a while that I haven't been out handing out buddy poppies and being out in the public. So it was a strange thing, but just want to remind everybody why we had yesterday off. Hopefully most of us. So, and then also in terms of electronic meetings, I think this is going well. I really do appreciate it and everybody's work on it. And then this is more of a budget thing, but I see the cost for the tablets and things like that. I think it's something we really need to look at, particularly with kind of the information that was shared in the last couple of days. And I think if we had an electronic over email and clarifications and things, I think if we had some electronic agenda management, we could all stay on the same page. And I think we're all learning how to do this as well. And I think that would help a lot.
Yeah.
And I think there could be an analysis of how much ink and how much paper would be, the cost of those things would be defrayed by the electronic system. So something to consider.
And Shorty, I think you said you'd kick in some, so your officers didn't have to deliver. You'd share some from your budget.
That's right, mileage. I forgot.
Quick enough.
What's that? What's that, Shorty?
I said I couldn't get it off unmute quick enough.
Okay.
Sure, tip in. They'll be happy for that.
Michael, anything?
Well, I was gonna mention that there were 3 trees downtown that weren't lit, because that's one of my favorite things to do. But none of the trees are probably lit today because they got trimmed, and I think the lights will probably go back up the next day or two. But it really is a change of atmosphere downtown without the lights.
Not lit. Yeah.
It's very nice. So I'm glad that we do that.
Pamela?
Yes, I would like to ask the board if we could do a resolution concerning Larry Cheek, the Mayor Pro Tem of Siler City, and send that to the Siler City Board and his family regarding his passing.
And perhaps we could add that to our work session next Tuesday to get it out more quickly.
Okay. Great.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Pam, how many terms that he served?
Oh, it's probably been as many terms, if not more, than I served. It's been a while.
Yeah, yeah. He did some remarkable work for Siler City.
Yeah, it did.
And I know, following in his footsteps in the Tarpo representation, I know he did a heck of a job there.
He did. He did. And when Mayor Grimes was sick and he stood in as mayor, he did a great job then too. So I think we need to just acknowledge all that he's done. And thank you all.
Thank you, Pamela. Okay. Is there anything else? John, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. It's been a very good, very intense meeting. We've gotten a lot done and covered some really beefy subjects. And I do want to thank staff, especially, also want to recognize that for all of us, this is different. These Zoom calls are different. They're harder to pay attention to for longer time periods. We sat through some really long meetings and face-to-face sessions, and I don't think it was anywhere near as tiring. So let's give ourselves all a break and appreciation, and especially staff for continuing these efforts in the pandemic.
Yep.
Thank you.
Amen. Thanks very much to staff and Cassie in particular for becoming a high-tech wizard in a short period of time. So we appreciate it very much. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.